get started, I want to get into my introduction, just give recognition of who I work with. So I work at Florida State University, and I work in the Department of Family and Child Sciences. And my director at the Family Institute is Frank Finchel, and he is very kind and encouraged me to come down here and talk with you all. Now, I came to the Family Institute as an experimental psychologist, trained in statistics and methodology. And during this time here, I started as a postdoc working with Marco Sanchez Gonzalez, which is the presenter here. And he trained me on exercise physiology. So my research program at Florida State University is what I call psychocardiology, which mixes negative affect aspects with cardiovascular functioning. And through that work, I got interested in work burnout and contextualized stress, which led me to a research program with burnout. So during this lecture, these are the learning objectives that we set out, and hopefully you'll pick these up as we go along. I want you to be familiar with research advancements and the measurement of work burnout. I like to think that's my bread and butter and what I probably know best. And now lately I've been going into transitioning from work burnout to sleep quality. And with that, we'll talk about a little bit of the similarities and differences between shift work and work burnout. And we'll conclude with some up-to-date empirical data on the relationship between all three constructs: shift work disorder, work burnout, and sleep quality. Now, burnout. Let's start there. So I just quickly put up some references from other work I've been doing. And that's just to remind myself and remind the audience that while this presentation is about sleep quality and shift work, that work burnout, in my estimation, is a very prevalent phenomenon that's linked to a variety of different physiological symptoms and psychological symptoms, including emotional regulation, academic performance, cardiovascular activity, all the way to intimate partner violence. It's a very robust phenomenon. And in all these publications, I will tell you that in everything that we do, we control for perceived stress, anxiety, and depression. So everything that I've found that links burnout to these other outcomes is in addition to the symptomology of negative affect. Okay, so when I first started doing work burnout research in 2012, which is not that long ago, when I was studying publications or journal articles, and I got a lot of negative reactions from editors saying, burnout's not that important. Why is this something you're doing? Why are you looking at depression? And I was showing that, hey, in addition to depression, burnout is something we need to be concerned about. So as you can see, I think the nation is getting wise to the fact that specifically resident, intern, and physician burnout is very prevalent. It's not a surprise, we all know that. And it's even becoming very popular in media now. So all these are 2018 articles in popular media saying, hey, we need to be wise to this. It's very important. It's causing significant negative influences on patient care and physician health. So we're now in what I consider a blooming area of work burnout research. And it's important to keep in mind what kind of impact does burnout have. First thing I'm talking about right now is patient care. Now this is a study or a survey done in Massachusetts that looked at clinicians and executives' reasons why they need to address physician burnout. The top concern, decreased quality of care, and the effect it has on our research team. What I find a little concerning about this is the least prevalent thing is physician suicide. I think there needs to be a little bit more attention, not only to the patient care, but the physicians themselves, and self-care. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation. Okay, just looking at prevalence again. So this is very recent, a 2018 publication, a very well done study, a meta-analysis of 47 studies of physician burnout. 42,000 physicians were rated. Now, they associated physicians burnout with, So these are odds ratios. So burnout was associated with 2 times the risk of patient safety incidents, low professionalism, reduced patient satisfaction. And most interesting about this, as you can assume that would be related to negative outcomes, is that it's particularly important for early career physicians. So burnout had a stronger relationship with these negative outcomes if you're an early career physician. And that's not too surprising considering you're transitioning into a new career. There's increased demands with that transition. You're not in the flow yet. Okay. So the main conclusions that I thought were more important. Physician burnout is jeopardizing patient care. Reversal of this risk has to be viewed as a fundamental healthcare policy across the globe. So, work burnout has been prevalent in Europe for decades now. It's now in the last 2 decades, it's becoming more common in the United States. And now you're seeing it in Asia, and South America. So, the awareness that physician burnout in this case, is a global phenomenon, is to be recognized here, including some investment in improving physician wellness. Okay, last study on prevalence here. So just to wrap this up with why it's important to address this, it's affecting physicians' decision making. They make good decisions with the patient. Of course, physicians being hostile, bullying. The new line of research I'm getting into is workplace bullying and how burnout is contributing to that. Okay. And as we know, almost anything you can measure that has a negative connotation or negative outcome will be related with burnout. It's a very robust phenomenon. Okay. So I'm going to talk now about the measurement of burnout and give you some suggestions of what we should be doing. Okay. There's at least 5 different conceptualizations or models of burnout. Now, they're all very similar in the fact that burnout is conceptualized as roughly emotional exhaustion, what we call depersonalization. There's a cognitive aspect to it, and a cynicism. So all these conceptualizations are very similar. Sometimes there's a 2-factor, 3-factor model. But what's most prevalent now is what we call the Maslach burnout inventory. So if you read a burnout study, 90% of the studies use this measure. So this measure conceptualizes burnout as 3 factors. The first is emotional exhaustion. So it involves chronic emotional depletion, physical exhaustion also. Depersonalization, or what I call cynicism, where you have a sense of a disconnection from your team. And diminished personal accomplishment, where you evaluate yourself negatively in light of the work you're doing. So longitudinal studies of work burnout show that they don't occur at the same time. You have emotional exhaustion and cynicism developing first, which then leads to a sense of diminished personal accomplishment. So there's a temporal aspect to its development. So one of the major issues with the MBI is it's proprietary. And that creates some problems for different companies that assess this with their workforce. And I didn't like that. So I decided to do a big data study trying to create an efficient measurement of burnout that I can screen very quickly, that has a discriminatory factor which is very similar to the full measure and can use in a quick setting. So I suggest, and this paper is in review right now, using the 4-item burnout inventory. And if anybody in here would like to use these items or have a citation with this publication, feel free to contact me. I would love for you to use it. It's just 4 items. Okay, and these 4 items have been shown to, there's a 22-item measure, a 9-item measure, and now a 4-item measure. And the 4-item measure does a really good job of capturing what is in that 22 item and 9 item measure. And it correlates with all the outcomes that we'd expect very similarly. So this 4 item measure compared to the smaller 9 item measure, same relationship with the CSD, which is a depression measure. Same with STAXI is an anxiety measure. And the PSS is a perceived stress scale. So the 4 item measure is faster when it comes to assessments. It's giving you the same amount of information when it comes to covariates. It is not proprietary. Now leading into the relationship of burnout and sleep. This study that I just showed with the 4 item measure can differentiate people on the Pittsburgh sleep scale, which is not surprising. Sleep aspects, negative sleep aspects are related to burnout. Okay, so I just quickly talked about a new measure for burnout. I think it's the next screening measure, and then conceptualization as a 3-factor measure. Now I want to get into research that looks at burnout and sleep. Okay. I want to first talk quickly about theoretical models of why you think they're related, because that's what all scientists do. We have theoretical models. And again, some empirical data showing why this is important. Okay. So, we think of burnout as a progression of a syndrome that occurs slowly over time. Now, burnout was conceptualized in the 70s, and his original model had these 12 steps. Now, this doesn't necessarily go in this order in the development, but there are some important aspects to pick out here. The first phase starts with individuals recognizing what they're doing is important. They're evaluating the work as something they need to do, and they start being more ambitious and invest in what they're doing. They put more hours in. Right? Income is important. Professional evaluation is important. So you're buying into the work you're doing. Okay? It's good. However, when you do that, you're sacrificing your time in other domains, especially self-care. You get into here where you're replacing those healthy things you do, like sleep, exercise, good nutrition, with your workload. You're getting a little grumpy. You're getting hostile. You start withdrawing from personal relationships. People start noticing these changes. Oh, this isn't good. And you get into more severe negative affect, going through emptiness, depression, and then full syndrome of burnout. So it's something that you can see happen over time. And there is, I wouldn't say a disease state progression, but it's similar to that. Now when it comes to sleep and models of sleep, we think the more that you fall into that progression, the stronger your sleep issues related. Where you start with micro sleeps to the inability to actually get full unfragmented sleep, to that progression. Now, the research, I'll say that for a second. Was it a good picture? Okay. I will tell you that there is not a lot of research on the relationship between work burnout, physician burnout, and sleep quality. Part of the reason is there's limited funding, and what has been done is mostly cross-sectional. That is a problem. But some of the research I found out there that was very interesting. The first study was a 2015 study that compared healthy controls and burnout individuals during the week and weekday. Now this measure over here is alertness, and this is mental fatigue. And you can see whether it's a weekday or a weekend, people that have been classified as burnout have higher issues with mental alertness and mental fatigue. And that's the only study I know that looks at those relationships throughout the week, during weekdays, or work days, and on the weekends. So you can see, even on the weekend, when you're trying to get sleep a little bit more, it doesn't matter. You still have issues with fatigue and sleepiness. Okay. Now, this is the first incident of shift work relationships with sleep quality. So you can look at, this is very similar to the slide before, we're looking at burnout individuals when it comes to sleepiness compared to healthy controls over the weekend and weekdays. Relationships in this study are a little less pronounced, but still there. And this is interesting where they used shift workers and their own controls. So this is their issues with sleepiness during the night and the morning to the day compared to when they're off of work. So their mental fatigue during work is much higher than when they're off work, obviously. Okay. Now, in the research that I've done with work burnout, articles I found that in looking at the medical field, a lot of burnout is concerned with residents and interns because they have a strong curriculum, they have a lot of responsibilities, and they're really, at least at my school, Florida State University, they're really concerned with self-care and depression and suicide. So this is, you see a lot of studies out there that looks at medical students or residents. So they did this study, which I found was really interesting. They're assessing sleep quality, depression, burnout at the beginning of the intern year and at the end of the year, which is nice. We're getting that temporal aspect down, so you can see change over time, which I think is very important. Then you can see from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, their sleep quality during the week decreases. Their sleepiness increases. Depression increases. Their burnout, all of those three domains of burnout have increased. And their empathetic concern has decreased. What's interesting about this slide, those are all be expected if you're a burnout researcher, is this right here, personal distress. There's no change. I was like, that's interesting, why not? So I went and looked at the scale. And it's a scale of self-awareness of how much stress you're under. You don't realize you're that stressed. So on a questionnaire, when you're talking about citizens, you're like, oh, I'm a little higher on that. But you don't recognize the situation you're in. To me, that's interesting. It's something that we need to follow up on a little bit more. Okay. And this is another graph where I find this interesting as a depression or as a burnout researcher. As you look at the change from the beginning to the end, so those are quite strong magnitudes. But look how much larger this burnout is. That's 10% to 60%. That's just in 1 year. So they have a really high prevalence increase from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. What these studies lack, or what I've been talking about, is a temporal relationship. Does burnout cause sleep problems, or does sleep problem cause burnout? Theoretically, I could argue both things. Okay? The only way to answer that question is to get into multiple assessments over time. And that's what I started investigating. So I start with students because for me, they're easy population to assess. It's true. And I was measuring burnout with a school burnout inventory, which is very similar to the Marshall burnout inventory. It has 3 factors, but it's 9 items. It's pretty quick. And the sleep inventory is specifically designed by a researcher in Sweden to maximize the relationship between burnout and burnout-related sleep problems. Okay. I'm able to turn off thoughts of daily responsibilities before bed. I'm able to sleep well when I know I have to wake up early. I sleep less because of school. So sleep exhaustion, cynicism, exhaustion, or sorry, that should be depersonalization, the sleep, over 3 waves. Oh, we don't want to go through all those. There's some time to talk about that. That's a lot. I'm a stat nerd, so that's kind of what I like. Okay, so the relationship between burnout time 1, time 2, and 3, they're all related to each other. Sleep 1, 2, and 3. That's not surprising. What is interesting when you put this in a late growth model, that burnout over the course of the semester increases at a very consistent rate for each individual. Same thing for sleep problems. So sleep problems increase the longer you're into the semester, and that corresponds with the increased stress. Okay, this is a very novel finding. I'm really excited this got accepted for publication, where I'm showing that over time, burnout is predicting, so burnout at time 1 predicts sleep problems at time 2. Burnout at time 2 predicts sleep problems at time 3. So I can show that increases in burnout are causing issues with sleep and not vice versa. Sleep problems are not increasing burnout scores. Burnout scores are increasing sleep problem scores. And that's helpful as a researcher because it gives me a place of intervention. So I need to look at more burnout issues and not sleep quality issues. Okay. So changing a little bit of the emphasis here. So I work in the Department of Family and Child Sciences. And during my training in grad school, I didn't really appreciate the importance of your social relationships. And working where I'm working now has really taught me you have to understand the context of a personal relationship. A lot of the research we do with our couples. So this model looks at a husband and a wife. So your scores of sleep quality are not independent from your partners. They're related. That should not be surprising. What is surprising, or at least novel, there are the relationships, cross relationships, or in the research world we call partner effects. So in this model, here's a wife's burnout score, a husband's burnout score, sleep disturbance scores for the wife and husband. And in this model, we were looking at self-control. How good are you at setting your alarm? How good are you at getting to bed on time? How good are you delaying your general sense of delayed gratification? And we can show that whether a husband's relationship with his wife is not influential on her sleep disturbance scores, but the wife's are to the husband. And what we found that's very interesting with this is husband's income is related to wife's sleep disturbance. So the more income a husband has, the least amount of, or the less amount of sleep disturbance. That was another finding. There's a lot in this model, but I just want to put emphasis on it's important when you're assessing burnout and sleep quality to understand the personal relationships a person has. Okay. Now we're going to get transition from burnout, sleep, into shift work. Now I will tell you that I am not an expert in shift work, but I will become one. This is something that I'm transitioning into, and I think is very interesting because it's an applied context. Okay. So my understanding, my readings, shift work disorder and work burnout are not the same thing. I've had arguments with reviewers already where they say they're the same thing, they're not. And I can make this argument why they're not. They're coming from different places. They're affecting different, they have different symptoms. They're related to sleep quality differently. We treat them different, and there's empirical data showing that they are unique. Okay. So, what is shift work? It's very self-explanatory. Anytime when you have a job where you have shifts, a 9-to-5 schedule, sometimes a little longer, 12-hour schedule, you're classified as a shift worker. So outside outside the typical 9 to 5 schedule. So if you're outside the typical 9 to 5 schedule, and you have the schedule itself, and it's rotating your shift worker. Now, the Department of Labor estimates 15% of the workers in the U.S. are full-time shift workers. And when you find these in a lot of the service industry, medical field, firefighters, police officers, that have longer shifts, nurses, nurse burnout is like a huge thing. If you just Google burnout, your first 10 things will be on nurse burnout. It's a very prevalent phenomenon. Okay. So, the underlying issue with shift work disorder is a disruption in the circadian rhythm. And that's what leads to all these negative outcomes: lack of energy, sleepiness, lack of sleep, falling asleep at work, errors. You know, researchers in this field aren't concerned with so much of depersonalization or reduced professional accomplishment. They're more interested in looking at their rhythm, sleep rhythms. So, the cause of shift work disorder is assumed to be chronic sleep deprivation. Night shifts, rotating shifts, early morning shifts disrupt the natural circadian rhythm of sleep, which leads to all the negative outcomes we've talked about. Okay. I don't think I need to get into all the negative outcomes of that. Okay. As an experimental psychologist and not a medical doctor, I am more interested in promoting treatments that are not medical. And one thing that is nice with what I've seen with shift work disorder is if you regiment yourself in a nice sleep schedule, it really dramatically decreases your cognitive issues. Now, you still will have alert issues, but the cognitions that you have seem to improve. I'm not familiar with all the medications, but that has been shown to improve shift work and some non-medical issues. Caffeine, light therapy, melatonin. The research on some of these are kind of iffy. I'm not really sure. But the interesting methodology that's giving us some insight into shift work disorder are sleep diaries, especially with new technologies, where you have so I'm starting a study in about 2 weeks. It's a diary study of looking at shift workers in Tallahassee, and specifically a couple of a couple groups of nurses that are volunteering or doing this, and we're tracking their sleep through some apps, and that's going to be very interesting when it comes to their correspondence with the sleep diary studies and also the sleep studies that are going to be used in the hospital. We're going to track some of their aortic hemodynamics, the heart rate variability. We have some ambulatory equipment in there. So this is going to be a nice frontier for us. Okay. Now, I put this slide in here just as a reminder that I'm not a physician, but I think that this might be something the physician might want to be mindful of the relationship when they see a patient with their sleep quality, as this whole last 3 or 4 days have emphasized. Okay, a couple conclusions, a wrap up, and then we'll get into some questions and answers again. So I wanted to highlight that burnout is a very prevalent phenomenon that's linked to a variety of negative outcomes, including heart rate variability, aortic hemodynamics, learning outcomes, GPA, self-control, a lot of things. I want to emphasize that there are measures out there that are just as good as the proprietary measures that you can use. That it's an increasing prevalency, so just the news in itself, just not with physicians, there's about a 45% rate of burnout. Within the physician medical field, it's even higher. Estimates up to 60, 80% I've seen. It's very high. Our data suggests when it comes to the relationship between burnout and sleep quality, that burnout leads to sleep problems and not vice versa. And that study I showed you, I replicated twice already. So I'm very confident in that. I've also highlighted just a little bit that shift work disorder is a disruption of circadian rhythm. And the evidence out there suggests that there are non-medical treatments, including getting more routine that helps with that. And that's something that is not related with work burnout. Work burnout is not treated that way. And then I would just like to kind of note that for increased funding, needs to be emphasized to understand what these phenomena, because there's not a lot of funding out there, and it's not something we control. But the reason why the work burnout research is lagging behind other fields, including like in the sleep field, is because there's not money out there. So we're just on the cusp of developing a new understanding empirically. So, how do we prevent burnout? There's a couple different ways. First, understand that what you're doing has meaning and have some intrinsic value in what you're doing. Right? So that's the first step into understanding, hey, what I'm doing is important. But don't put too many demands over the resources you have. So the best theoretical model that I've seen that explains work burnout is you have too many demands given the resources, and that's an unbalanced equation. Be into your work, but understand that you can affect your work environment and try to minimize the demands you have for your resources. And also, take care of yourself. Sleep, exercise, eat some good food. And this will lessen your likelihood of developing burnout. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Dr. May, you have provided one of the best lecture for all of us, how to tackle these issues. I think we will be all utilize that as best of our ability. Thank you, Dr. May. Let's give this lecture. We're a little bit earlier in our time. But that's okay. We're going to have the next lecturer that is coming in. Very good friend of mine, for a long time associate with him. I learned a lot from him. He's an excellent lecturer. Jose David Suarez is voluntary assistant clinical professor of the Harvard Wellcome College of Medicine, Florida International University. He is diplomat of the American Board of Family Medicine, and he is the director of the Westchester Family Medicine Program. Please welcome Dr. Jose David Suarez.